This morning on Jersey Magazine, we welcome back Jessie Gomez. Jessie is a reporter for Chalkbeat Newark, covering Newark public education and the Newark public schools. Jessie, good morning.
Good morning, Jim. How's it going?
It's going pretty well. I want to start with Governor Mikie Sherrill. You recently wrote a piece for Chalkbeat Newark talking about her first budget, which will break records for state education spending. There's a lot going on in there. Give us the highlights of that budget, Jessie.
Yeah, so overall, Governor Mikie Sherrill proposed last month her $60.7 billion budget, right? Now, here for the sake of education, it really focused her budget also kind of, in terms of education, her administration had said that it's really highlights record spending for education, really lots of investments in youth. What we did see was more than 13.8 billion just for education. And as we break that down, when it comes to K to 12 aid, that's $12.4 billion for all schools throughout New Jersey. Specifically 1.4 billion for preschool, which follows former Governor Phil Murphy's footsteps in expanding access to universal pre-K across all school districts. And we also saw more investments, as she promised during the campaign, for high impact tutoring, and of course the state's first cell phone free initiative starting this fall.
We had talked in our last conversation about cell phone free schools, and it takes effect this coming fall. Uh, I wonder about the challenges of that. And recently, of course, we had the ruling that went against Meta, platforms like Instagram and Facebook, that say that this harms kids' mental health.
Yeah, and again, Governor Sherrill was very clear on her campaign that she wanted to invest in her agenda, which was basically to protect kids and youth from online mishaps and making sure that they were safe online. So her budget really reflects that too. We are seeing $625,000 going just for supporting that initiative. And when we break that down specifically, that's $125,000 for a new office that her administration is creating. It's called the Office of Youth Online Mental Health Safety and Awareness. That's a mouthful, right? But basically, they're in charge of developing new policies to keep students online safe. And there's also an extra $500,000 proposed in her budget for a new social media research center to just further develop this work as well.
And I think one of the things that comes to mind with regard to this is Governor Sherrill has four children, and they're between the ages of 14 and 20. So they're right in that hot spot of the ages for kids with regard to social media and using their phones constantly. I mean, we do as adults as well, but you really get into the habit as a teenager.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what's even more interesting now is that a lot of school districts across New Jersey, like Newark, are starting to introduce, new technology in their classrooms as well. So when we talk about online safety, we're not just only talking about, kids on their cell phones, which is the primary concern, but we're also talking about safety with AI and making sure, these chatbots are talking properly to students, and how are students engaging with new AI developments as, they progress in their educational journey. So it's a lot, and I'm really interested, in a lot of education leaders are also interested to see how this will pan out in the next couple of months.
You mentioned high impact tutoring, and of course, I believe that came in under former Governor Phil Murphy, which is the same tutor working with a small group multiple times a week. What's happening with regard to that, Jesse?
Yeah, so we are also seeing investments to high impact tutoring in Governor Sherrill's proposed budget. Specifically, like I said at the top, $15 million for that, which would help expand the program to more than 100, an additional 100 school districts across New Jersey. There are already school districts like Newark that have gotten funding to, start their high impact tutoring programs in their school district. Usually, again, like you mentioned, during the day or after school. But the key here is that it's, with the same tutor 3 times a week. And so the goal really for that is to just help students refine those key skills that may have been lost, by COVID or under COVID. Now we are seeing gradual gains across the state. Districts like Newark are inching up and to, statewide levels. And although the state as a whole hasn't kind of bounced back from that, there are very, very close to doing so. So high impact tutoring really is just to help kids, boost their skills, and maybe this investment will yield those gains, and we'll see that in the next coming months as well.
What kind of effect have we seen so far with high impact tutoring, Jesse?
Yeah. Well, Governor Sherrill last month during her budget address, she actually pointed to some school districts like Camden, Franklin, and Elk Township who have boosted their math and literacy scores thanks to high impact tutoring. We all also seen gains in the Newark Public School District as well. Third graders are now bumped up to 27.7% of the city's public school third graders have bumped up in their literacy scores. That's a really big improvement from what we heard just 2 years ago when those numbers were below 20%, right? And so there are just a ton of efforts that are happening across all school districts. But I do think that high impact tutoring is something that a lot of school districts across the state can agree is helping students.
The Newark Public School Board just approved recently a new budget for next year. And one of the things that I noticed was more money being added to arts and music. And traditionally, across the country, those are two of the first programs that really feel the effects of being cut. And I'm surprised and I'm hopeful that this is happening in Newark. If it can happen there, perhaps we can add it across the country again, because I think arts and music are so important. And you think of the musicians and the artists who have come out of the Newark area and New Jersey in general. And it's so important to start this at younger ages.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great point too, and I think that's sort of what public school leaders in Newark are trying to get at as well. So last week they just approved their $1.67 billion budget. That is a lot of money for students, a lot of money for schools. And if we put that in the context of Newark, it sort of makes sense since there's, more than 40,000 students taking advantage of all these programs in the school district. And like you mentioned, the arts, right? So Superintendent Roger Leone at the budget hearing last week, he mentioned that the budget was constructed to ensure that the essential programs remain. Like you said, they want to have now music teachers and art teachers across all of their schools. They're opening a new media high school coming this fall. There is an emphasis to ensure that not only programs like art and music are in place, but also they're looking to, expand their, the offerings that they have and also open more schools, right? They're proposing to open a couple of new schools. They're projecting that enrollment is rising. But of course, not all is perfect in this budget. There are a couple of cuts, right? The district plans to cut 30 teaching positions, 6 administrative roles, 9 school support staff. But overall, there are still more than 3,000, teaching positions planned for the upcoming school year. So there is more money coming into Newark, but also, there are tough decisions that have to be made.
How thin is that line between politicians not wanting to raise taxes, or at least not too much, and countering that with federal budget cuts that we've had recently?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And it's tough because every school district in New Jersey sort of is able to do, kind of their own thing when it comes to taxes, right? When we look at Newark, they can't raise their property taxes as much as other school districts, and just the property bases are very different, right? So to put things into perspective, Newark Public School, the largest school district in New Jersey, receives more than 80% of their state aid directly from their state. That differs from other smaller districts down south or in central Jersey. And this year alone, Newark Public Schools is raising taxes by $39.94. So that brings total yearly contributions to the average Newark homeowner just over $2,000, right? And so that's different from perhaps what other school districts are seeing in different parts of the state. But it's tough to kind of reconcile with, like you mentioned, the federal cuts and the state cuts, when a district like Newark is also not, the district like Newark is responsible in educating all of its kids, but also they have a really big share of vulnerable students, a big population of special education kids, a big population of English language learners. And those types of students require more services and therefore yield more costly kind of programs and things like that. So when we talk about the cuts that are happening, it impacts student learning. It impacts students and the quality that students get at the end of the day.
You can check her out online at chalkbeat.org/Newark. Jessie Gomez, thanks as always for your time. I look forward to speaking with you again here on Jersey Magazine.
Thanks for having me, Jim. I appreciate it.